Leeds, Leeds, Leeds. What is happening? Welcome to Series 6 of Working Hours, an oral history podcast about a place called Leeds, a time called now, and an activity called work. Working Hours aims to record 200 loiners, that's people from Leeds, over the first half of the most important decade in the history of the human species, and ask them about what they do all day and hear how they feel about it. My name is Simon, and this is all my fault. My mission here is to try to map out what my city, Leeds, a city that has declared a climate emergency, did during humanity's biggest emergency. On Working Hours, we hear how loiners have, are, and will be coping with our multiple and expanding crises during their day-to-day working hours. To tell this story, I need loiners like you, dear listener. I need people in Leeds or people from Leeds to come on this podcast and tell me about what they do all day and let me record how this decade affects us. Thank you for listening to this episode. What did you want to be when you grew up?
Do you know what? I spent my entire childhood not having a clue what I wanted to do. You know, I really struggled at school. I didn't get on with education at all. It wasn't until I got older and sort of found my feet that I kind of realised what it is I wanted to do. But when I was younger, I hadn't got a clue, mate.
It's very common.
Yeah.
And sort of train driver is one that I've not had as much as I would expect. Fireman's been in a lot.
Oh yeah.
Football player as well.
Definitely. Yeah. I think. Do you know what? I really wish, because I like to think about how my my sort of family history and all that kind of stuff played into me doing what I do now. But I always rack my brain about that. But I just was concentrating on putting one foot in front of another and not tripping over when I was like, more than anything else.
Just try not to be noticed too much.
Yeah. Oh God. With the size of my gob, that was always very difficult.
You're listening to Series 6, Episode 26, and to my guest, Dave Pike. This is another Squadcast recorded on the 3rd of September, 2025. Welcome back, my colleagues. Dave Pike joined the Trades Union Conference, TUC, from the NEU, National Education Union, where he was leading on activist development and mobilisation. Dave has worked on several high-profile campaigns, including leading the NEU's response to COVID in the East Midlands and mobilising around pay campaigns, as well as a number of local disputes, including with a large education service seeking to restrict the voice of LGBT plus educators. Further, Dave has a wealth of experience in organising with care workers and delivery drivers. He also brings to the TUC valuable experience in building resistance against the far right and supporting the LGBT plus community. Right, let's do this. Episode 181 of Working Hours with Dave Pike. Okay, so we'll go straight into the next question. So what is it that you're doing now? What are you doing now then?
So I'm very lucky to be the regional secretary for the Trade Union Congress in the North East and Yorkshire Humber, which is a hell of a job. And it means that I'm the senior representative for the TUC, which is a body which represents 48 affiliated trade unions. And in this region, that's about 800,000 unionised members. So it's a real honour of a job to do, because you get to speak up for union members at a political level and try and push for things that we know workers in this country need, and fight for good jobs, fight for decent communities for people to live in, good public services, and just be a voice for that. It's a real honour of a job to do.
So let's go into a bit of your day to day then. So what does that actually involve? Is it a series of meetings that are already set up that you need to attend to, and a series of like boards and groups that you need to sit on?
Yeah.
Is it you ringing round people? Like what do you do on a sort of day-to-day basis?
Honestly, not one, and you probably get this one a lot on this podcast, but not one day is the same, and that is one of the best parts about the job.
Mm,
And my favourite days are the ones where I get to spend very early mornings, usually cold mornings, on picket lines with members of our affiliated unions, showing them the support of our movement behind them when they're fighting to make their working life better.
mm,
So, for example, a few weeks ago, I spent the morning on a picket line outside the National Coal Mining Museum with Unison members who were there fighting for a decent pay rise. And you just the energy and support that you can bring to that is it's honestly one of the best parts of the job.
mm,
But outside of that, I also spend a lot of time with our region's mayors, with their teams, pushing for things like a fair work charter in West Yorkshire, or for decent agreements around procurement and things like that. Trade union education being a key part of that. So it's a really varied job, but you get to meet some incredible people, and
mm,
that is the thing that motivates me to do this job day in day out. Is the
mm,
passionate and caring people I get to work with, who really do give a crap about the people they work with. They really care about their community, and they dedicate their entire life and all their time to making their work better, making work better for others, and getting to come in behind those people and support them. It's a really good reason to get out of bed in the morning, and
mm.
it is some early starts, but it's great.
Yeah, but it's for a good reason, so
Oh
that
yeah,
helps. Yeah.
100%.
So, where do I want to go with this? Let's go on to the next question. So, how did you get into this? I guess someone asked you to be in a union. You were in a union, and you sort of moved that way. Was that the case?
Sort of. So I got told to be in a union rather than asked. My family are trade union through and through.
Mm,
My mum's dad was a shop steward in cotton mills in Lancashire. My mum was a negotiating secretary for the NASUWT,
mm,
which, for anyone who doesn't know what that is, that's one of the teaching unions here in Sheffield. And I got my first job, and the first thing my mum said to me was, "Which union are you joining?" So I was told that you get involved with the union, and it always felt like a very abstract thing to me. I think until after I'd gone to uni, so I didn't go to uni until a bit older. Did international relations politics for
mm,
3 years. Came back, couldn't find work doing anything related to that.
mm,
Did a little bit of teaching, did a little bit of other stuff, but ultimately ended up back in the same Pizza Hut restaurant Pizza Hut takeaway that I'd worked in before I went to university.
mm,
And that really, for me, made what we as trade unions do really real. It stopped being this abstract thing. And, despite all the work that I put in and the coming out with a first degree and all this really nice stuff that I was really proud of,
mm,
I found myself in exactly the same spot as if nothing had changed, and
mm,
found myself surrounded thinking, do you know what, actually, this isn't just a passing thing where I'm working in this Pizza Hut takeaway on minimum wage with other people on minimum wage. And it started to wake this thing up in me where I went, do you know what, we're all trying to build our lives. We're all trying to do this stuff. This isn't just a nice little, I'll just do a Saturday night here and that'll pay for my beer money.
mm,
This is a job where people are building families, building a future, and got increasingly frustrated with that. So, alongside my colleagues, we built the Pizza at Workers Union in
mhm,
Sheffield, which we, over the space of a year, managed to build up a membership across South Yorkshire and the East Midlands predominantly, to the point where we actually had negotiations with the CEO of Pizza Hut at the time, and managed to win pay rises. And this was this will be like 2010.
Yeah.
So this is going back a while. And for me, that experience just stoked what was already there, I think, underlying, but absolutely stoked this passion for what working people can achieve with a bit of organising and a bit of grit and a bit of confidence. You'll be amazed what you can achieve. Because I think the thing that always stuck with me from that experience was going to a Pizza Hut in Nottingham. And we had this strategy of a few of us from our shop in Crooks and Sheffield would just get in a car and we'd drive to random Pizza Huts, and we'd just walk in and say, "Oh, we're here from the union and we've come to speak to staff." Most of the time, managers would tell us to get stuffed, would tell us to get lost. But there was this one manager in the shop in Nottingham who went, "Oh, right, yeah, of course. No, I've heard all about that." And you go, and it made me real, because he was clearly talking out of his arse. He was, he'd clearly thought, "Oh, it's better that I pretend I know what's going on and nod it along." And then we spent like an hour in the back of this Pizza Hut talking to every member of staff there, signed up nearly every single person who was working that day to the union. And it made me realise that, some of the problems that we face can be actually faced down by a bit of confidence and a bit of know-how. And it really gave me that shot of energy for this work that made me think, do you know what? We can do that on a bigger scale. We can get out and do that more. And it was great. It was a great campaign while it lasted. It lasted a couple of years. We got that pay rise out of it. But then after that, I went on and worked for GMB in their learning program, doing education with them. Was there for about 3 years. Went on to work for the Royal College of Midwives after that as an organiser, and then moved over to after I did a law degree, I moved over and worked for the NUT, which then became the National Education Union. So kind of went through this whole process working for these different organisations. When this job came up with the TUC, it was a great opportunity and something that I was incredibly passionate about. The role was to celebrate all the good things across the trade union movement that we achieve, because every single union that I've ever known has something that they are incredibly good at. Whether that's USDOR, which is the shop and retail workers union, they are incredibly good at recruiting people, because so many the turnover in retail is so high. They are fantastic at getting out there, speaking to people, encouraging them to join union, or whether you talk about Unite and their industrial strategy, that every single union has something that they are really, really good at. And for me, one of the greatest things about this job is that I get in behind those unions, celebrate what it is that they do, help them share it with other unions, and help build that confidence. That was that experience right at the start for me. And this is what makes a difference to working people, to be able to change things they don't like about their working conditions. It's confidence. It's confidence. It's the ability to stand up and talk for yourself. And you do that through experience and through training and support, and being able to be that person who can sort of facilitate that across our movement is an incredible honour to be in that role. So it was a long way around to get to where I am. But, I really feel that the experience that I've been through to get here, be extremely passionate about what I do and really proud of the work that I get to do. And I may have only been doing it 6 months, but great. It's a great job to be in, and I absolutely love it.
Yeah. So I'm immediately thinking of, you started off there with, something difficult that succeeded. Have you kind of hit those highs again? Are you still able to kind of, or are you still chasing that kind of, I want another campaign that's as good and as big as that?
Do you know what? I think there's been loads throughout my trade union work that I've been really proud of. the Pizza at Workers campaign was definitely one, because that was something I kind of started off my own back and built up from nothing. But all the way through my my time in this kind of work, the thing that always has amazed me has just been the incredible workplace activists, like workplace reps and people like that, that manage to stand up and run a campaign in their own workplace and get in to support them, either as an official when I have been, or in this role. It's great to see, So last week I was on the picket line with a woman called Gemma up at Airedale Hospital, where GMB are on strike, fighting against outsourcing. So she's a cleaner at Airedale Hospital, and they're on sort of a privatised company, once removed from the hospital, constantly told they don't work for the NHS, despite all the evidence being that they definitely work for the NHS. And it's getting to meet people like that I think every day I'm like, yeah, it's great to jump in behind what other people are doing as well. One of the last big disputes I had at the NEU before I left, a place called Bulwell in Nottingham, and getting to work with the reps there who managed to overcome a real bully of a head teacher, managed to stand up collectively to him, and saw the back of him by the end of the dispute, all because they stayed united and stayed committed to what it was they were doing. And so, for me, this work is it's a lot of hard slog. It's a lot of work, and there's a lot of lows, and a lot of late nights, early mornings, etc. But when you get to be involved with those campaigns where people are making a real difference to the world around them, it's incredible. That's a constant high about this job. Is when you get to spend time with people doing that. Passionate people who really give a crap about the people around them. That's unbeatable.
Yeah. I mean, I think I said this on the interview with Sam. One of the things when I worked at Union Learn, when you got someone, like when they did events, there would always be someone who was a learner who started with something small, or, they couldn't read and they were in their 40s, 50s or whatever. And then they started on something and then they'd done a master's or whatever. And it's amazing to see, because it's firsthand and it's people like lives that have actually been changed. It's not removed in that way. And it's directly like, this changed my life. And it's really great to hear that, because when you're looking at all those endless stupid emails and pointless reports and, you kind of like, oh, right, yeah, this is the reason. There is a purpose.
Yeah, this is the reason I get out of bed, not because I like responding to emails and doing paperwork.
Yeah. And going to some, obscure council meeting because you need to be there for some reason, and you're like, why am I here?
Yeah, absolutely. I have to remind myself of that constantly. In some board meeting somewhere where talking about something, and you just think, this just feels so distant from the reality of most people's lives. But actually getting up that next morning and then spending time with someone like Gemma and doing that work of supporting somebody who's really fighting for something important, you think, God, yeah, that's better. That's a much better way of doing it. But I do think as well, like in this role, you have a really privileged position because you have to be able to communicate those lessons, almost like lessons from the picket lines, I suppose, lessons from campaigns to big decision makers. You have to effectively pass that information across. And I think, sometimes people can think, oh, you're just blabbering on. You don't, but how do you really know that? Or it's because we have on the ground actual experience. This is why, despite all the political upheaval that we're facing, unions are still overwhelmingly trusted voices. Surveys show it time and time again. Union workplace reps, union officials are predominantly trusted voices. And that is because we are actually on the ground with people, listening to what's actually happening. We're not looking at survey data. We're not looking at some kind of polling system. We are actually in a workplace with actual people who are actually suffering from low pay, terrible conditions, 0 hours contracts. Let's just spend time with them. They're not an alien concept. They're people that we know and work with on a regular basis. Like you're saying about the learning and stuff, we know the effectiveness of union learning and union-led learning because we've actually spent time with the people it affects. We're not some distant fancy body, and I think that's why it's so important that when we talk about unions and their effectiveness, we're not talking about them as some imaginary third party. They're human beings doing human interaction with other humans.
Yeah, and the democratic element as well of like that there are, there's no other organisation really that's doing as much voting internally of like who's doing what and how is this organised. Yeah, and they're still relevant, like you say. I mean, they're still a strong voice, but yeah, we'll get into some of the other stuff as we go through, I'm sure.
Sure.
So I'm going to move us on to COVID now. So I assume you said you've only been doing this role 6 months. So you won't have been in this position. But if you think back to the lockdown, when we went into lockdown, what was your work like at the time? Was it something where you were doing all of the hours because you had to field all of the information and carry the can for everyone else? Did it stay the same, or did it just fall off a cliff? Like how was the work going into lockdown, and then coming out? What are the things that changed for you permanently?
So when during COVID, I was working for the National Education Union, and when we knew it was coming, there was a big discussion internally preparing for a huge number of inquiries. Despite the fact that we'd started to empty out our offices and we'd kind of started doing some of those initial actions that people were doing then, we'd still prepared for the fact we think we're going to get a lot of our members in schools ringing us up, worried about one thing or another. The weirdest thing about it was that just did not happen. Not at first. For the first period of that time, it just went absolutely radio silent. That it reminds me. I always think about, all those pictures of like big empty motorways and things like that. That was what it felt like, the kind of organisational equivalent of that. Just suddenly, just nothing. And we were all sitting there just thinking like, phones are going to start going mad anytime soon. We're going to start getting a load of email inquiries. Things are going to start coming in. Nothing. Just absolutely nothing. I think it wasn't until it will have been around when the first return to school started to happen that things really, really changed then. Because, and I was incredibly proud to be involved with this work, the NEU's response to that was really, really strong. Came out fighting on it and said, you cannot be sending educators back into schools. This is a vector of infection. If you send people back into schools, there will be an explosion in infections. And it will be educators at the forefront of that who will literally be putting themselves in danger. And Boris Johnson at the time refused to accept that it was a vector of infection, refused to accept that it would be a reason. And it was when the science sort of caught up with him that they had to change that. But they also had to change that because of the huge pressure they were coming from educators on the ground. People putting in what's called a Section 44 notice. A Section 44 notice is essentially health and safety terminology for refusing to work because it's too dangerous, which is a really, really powerful right that we're lucky to have in this country. But the amount of people that wrote in those letters saying, I will not come to work, it's too dangerous, made a huge difference. And I would actually say that the thing that changed permanently after COVID, particularly in this kind of work and working for the National Education Union at the time, was the confidence of members afterwards to be able to say, well, actually, do you know what? We did change government policy then. We actually all stuck together and said this thing, and it changed things for good. You know, it reduced the number of COVID infections. It had a massive impact on educators' lives, particularly black educators, particularly disabled educators who were more at risk. It had a massive impact and made a real difference. And I think they came out the other side of it more confident, and that's why, following on from it, not long after, we then had the biggest pay dispute in education for a very long time, which resulted in some real positive changes for teachers then. So for me, that was a real experience of people gaining some confidence through that. As far as my work goes as well, I guess one thing it also changed permanently was our expectation of what meetings looks like. And I think there'd always been this expectation before that if you go to a meeting, it has to be in person, and it's not the real deal if it's not in person. But it was really good education in the sort of flexibility around it. That actually in-person meetings have their strength, but doing things online can be quicker. You can get loads out of it still. And the same applied for training. For union rep training, union activist training. You had this massive shift where suddenly there was actually a recognition. Actually, you can do a lot of this stuff online.
Yeah.
Actually, you can meet with people. There's still a value to having people do stuff in person. But we trained hundreds of workplace activists during lockdown, all through regular online calls where we had tons of participants. People were tripping over themselves to come to that stuff. So I do think there was some real lessons I think learned during that time that have helped us, and I think the sort of political fallouts for it I think were really substantial. Seeing government run by people who didn't follow their own rules, I think has really damaged trust in politics in a way that I don't think we've properly got our heads around yet. Seeing Prime Minister and his advisors putting rules in place, stopping people going to family funerals while they sit in a cabinet office and have, a wine and cheese party. It really, I think that really damaged trust in politics, and we're still seeing the repercussions of that now, and that is something that I think is incredibly worrying that came off the back of COVID.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to move us straight on to Brexit, all the fun questions. So this is around about the same time. So sometimes it's quite difficult to kind of pull it apart for people. But yeah, since we have Brexited, has that changed your work at all? I would expect the answer would be yes in your case. But yeah, has it changed work for you at all?
Yeah, so I think there's obviously been changes to our legal framework that have had a big impact for the work of trade unions. There is no longer a set of EU law we can refer to when we are dealing with legal issues. But actually, I think the biggest change is a political shift. And I want to be really clear about the separation here. I don't think there is necessarily a connection between people voting for Brexit and being right wing. There was definitely a lot of left wing people who also voted for Brexit, and there is a wide variety of opinions on Brexit. But one thing it definitely did is it gave confidence to a right wing political ideal. It was seen, however you felt about it, it was encapsulated in a viewpoint of this is a victory for the right and for the right wing of politics. And I think for me, the thing that really brought that home was having a conversation with someone I had worked with in pubs around Sheffield, actually. She was a Spanish immigrant, and she just said, since that vote, I just don't feel safe on the streets anymore. People are shouting stuff at me in the streets as anti-immigrant sentiment, and I think the confidence boost that gave to people, particularly on like the far right, I think started to have an impact there. That's then been built on by other stuff, and continued to be built on around the issues around the arguments being made around immigration and stuff. But I think that definitely had an impact in giving that boost of confidence to the right. You know, opinions of Brexit aside, I do think that's one of the sort of biggest implications of it, unfortunately.
I mean, in the kind of work that you're doing, have you seen any campaigns sort of coming off the back of it or being sort of initiated by it? Or, I mean, has it changed anything on the ground? I mean, other than the rhetoric, the rise of the right, in terms of the actual things that you're seeing in campaigns,
Yeah.
has that changed at all, or has the nature of the people that are campaigning changed? Like, was there any? So, if we think about the example there of someone who's an EU national and they decided to leave, has that changed the makeup of members at all? Were any of them in trade unions? So, I mean, like I say, it's a long time since I was at the TUC, so that whole period, I don't know what it looked like or what was sort of going on really. But what's your sense of it? Is it the same old, or is there anything substantially different in there?
I honestly think it really varies sort of industry to industry. So I know, for example, for the musicians union, a big issue for them was the fact that since leaving the EU, it's made it really difficult for people who travel for a living, who literally make their money out of doing music tours,
Yeah.
who go to other countries, who will go into Europe. It made it incredibly difficult. I do think one of the a big boost in immigration numbers came immediately after Brexit, because we didn't have rules in place around immigration. And so I don't think it made a huge difference in that regard. But what I do think it did, the changes in the legal framework, the changes in our ability to take things to a higher court level. So, for example, being able to take things to the European courts, that being taken away, does start to put in place a lot more power at the British state level. But obviously the decision was taken afterwards to put all the power back into, just keep the rules as they are predominantly. I do think the Tories definitely tried to take as much advantage of that as possible to change things, but actually, predominantly targeting laws that benefit working people, making it harder for people to take issues to court, introducing fees, restricting the rights of trade unions. All of their sort of moves legislatively after Brexit showed that one of the real benefits they saw from it was the fact that they could attack the laws and the legislation that protect working people. So very much that was seen as a positive outcome for them, and I think that is what had the real impact on our work after Brexit. You had an emboldened Tory party who felt they could get away with anything.
It's a weird one, Brexit, because it's kind of it's going to be one of those that we don't really know what has happened for ages. Because like most of the people that I speak to, they're kind of like, no, not really noticed anything, unless they're getting supplies from abroad, or they're sending stuff abroad, or they have to travel for work. Then it's not really noticeable to them.
Yeah,
But people are starting to notice it on their holidays now.
Oh yeah,
which is interesting.
Yeah. But it is. I mean, the impact and the implications for businesses are massive. You saw that very quickly. One thing that this government has done very well is to very quickly try and bottom out some of those trade deals and get stuff like that sorted with the EU, because for whatever reason, for the Tory party, it is just their Achilles heel. that they are never able to have sensible discussions about a relationship with Europe. They will constantly turn on themselves and stab each other in the back over a relationship with Europe. Whereas, luckily, the Labour Party were much more able to have a sensible, grown-up discussion about Europe with Europe, rather than it being, this thing that they're all going to fight and kill each other over.
So let's move on to. So I'm going to do climate change next, and then we'll do social media last.
Great.
So this is on here for a number of reasons. One of them being that Leeds has declared a climate emergency. So within your work, how does climate change sort of affect things? Is it something that is part of your daily working? Is it something that's outside of that? Like, how does it fit in, and how does it affect things for you work-wise?
Massively. I mean, it's one of our priorities as a TUC is to campaign for what we call a just transition. And what that means is moving us to a greener economy, but doing that in a way that doesn't mean job losses, doesn't protect people's livelihoods. So, for example, we look at the oil and gas industry. We're very reliant on North Sea oil, but North Sea oil is running out. Output is reducing, but we have thousands and thousands of jobs across the Northeast that are entirely reliant on North Sea oil. And we need a real industrial strategy that is not going to let that go the way of the coal industry. Because that's what we're looking at. We're looking at the next version of the coal industry here, because we're going to run out of oil. We're going to stop using as much oil when we move to more electric vehicles. What is the plan? There has to be a plan that puts in place protections that recognise the skills in those jobs. I was reading a research paper that described the Northeast as having an unrivaled level of skills. And the reality is you have unbelievably skilled workers in that part of the world who would very easily be able to transition to more green jobs that still produce energy and still produce for this country, but have a future and have a long-term future. So for us, the question around climate change is absolutely the economic question of our age. How do we move to a greener economy in a way that protects working people? Because it has to be done. And then you look at things like energy prices, the effect that's having on industry. That's dramatic. We've seen that in Scunthorpe with the steel mills there. We've seen it in Sheffield now with Liberty Steel. The situation for heavy industry in this country is very, very difficult right now because of problems with energy prices, part of which is related to climate change. It's also related to global insecurity and tariffs from the US. From tariffs from Nigel Farage's mate, Donald Trump, to be precise. So we have to get our head around these big questions, and there has to be solid industrial strategy that involves unions from the base up. Now there is some really good work going on around that. So there's the Yorkshire and Humber Climate Commission. There is various different bodies up and down this country working hard on making sure that happens. But it's a big question, and it's a big area for discussion, but it has to be one that involves working people. So a big part of my job on a day-to-day basis is making sure that happens, is whenever there is discussions going on about climate policy in our combined authorities. So, say the mayor of the Northeast is Kim McGuinness is talking about a climate policy. I want to make sure that working people have a voice in that. I know Kim would be on board with that. But it's having that role of making sure working people are involved in those discussions, because if they're not, we will just see the same happen as happened with the coal industry in the 80s. We'll see entire communities devastated, and we'll see jobs disappear in their thousands. Because although there is green jobs, they have to be done in a way that we can be sure they're good jobs. They have to be unionised jobs, and they're all things that we have to fight for. So they're all battlegrounds for us, and something that is a key part of our strategy when it comes to discussions around climate change.
So there's a lot in that. I mean, my immediate thing is skills. It's a skills issue.
Yeah.
But it's and it's an industrial strategy question as well. It's like, where are you going to invest? But we don't live in a time where politicians think in the way of like actually investing in stuff and doing something. Even though they have just demonstrated recently that they can do things like by shutting the entire world down. But still, it's like, oh no, we couldn't possibly do a thing. It's like, you just did a thing. Do another thing.
It was a very big thing. We all remember it very well.
Yes, and you didn't do it great, but you still did it. You still did something. So it's a difficult one. So when you were saying about COVID, I remember years ago when I was still at the TUC of trying to get, we bought a special webcam for the meeting room. I was just like, stop people traveling to meetings. You'll save hundreds on rail fare. There's no need for all these people to come down and like for a meeting that's an hour, 2 hours or whatever. And it was so difficult. Like no one was having it. Like we bought the stuff, we managed to buy the stuff, but no one wanted to actually do the meetings that way. And it's like it took that event to get most of the world to just go, oh, we can do this online. And I include myself in that. I started recording on a digital recorder, meeting people in person. And then when we locked down, it took me months to go, oh, I could just record online. Like, I was just like, I can't do it now. So
The first podcast I was involved in recording, Talking Shop. I think you might still be able to find it online. I don't know, maybe it's gone now. But we always recorded. We had this brief time of recording in person, but it's just wild. It's just you don't need it. But it's funny you say about needing this big event. I do think, unfortunately, for climate change and for that to really become real for people, it is going to take these big events like fires and floods for people to realise the implications of what climate change means. The unfortunate reality is it doesn't feel real to most people. It feels like this weird idea that hippies talk about. It doesn't feel like something that is actually affecting you on the ground, unless you are in one of those industries that's been affected by it. But even then, it's seen as more, it's the government's fault because they're put in place these energy tariffs or whatever. Without thinking about the actual sort of global implications of climate change necessarily. So I think that's part of the challenge for people who want to talk about climate change, is being able to get that across to people, because people, it's a scary idea talking about the effect of climate change. So we have a kind of big job on our hands of communicating that to people. It's not easy. Projecting a bit of hope into it, right? Is that this is something we can do something about. These are things, these are problems we can solve. Like you talked about with COVID. Yeah, it was horrible. It was scary. It was it was really a nasty time. But we did do something. We did do something about it, and we, as a human race,
survived.
We survived it. Yeah. And there's other examples like that, like with the hole in the ozone layer when we when there was a connection made between that and aerosols,
Mm.
and realizing the damage that was doing. That very quickly got solved. That there is solves to these problems. There is ways of us transitioning our society to one that does less damage to the planet. But people have to have hope that that's actually going to work. And I think part of the issue for communicating around climate change is injecting some of that hope into it, that we can do that in a way that's going to make people will still also be able to go on holiday, and they'll still be able to have a nice life and nice things. But also we will have a society that damages the planet less. We can do both, and we have to be able to make that argument, I think.
I mean, going back to the sort of big event thing, like that's a common one in the popular imagination, and I think what it will be is lots of little events. So sort of like, so if you think of something like the Titanic sinking and that being responsible for a bunch of maritime law that comes after the event, but it wasn't the single thing that put all of the maritime law in, kind of thing. It's like, series of disasters that build on things that build on new regs, and it's like, it will be a weird thing that shapes over time with big significant, the graph will be like that, with occasional really big spikes of like things that have really changed things. And it'll be odd stuff as well, like really odd stuff that we didn't expect or didn't see coming, and then it's like, oh, this has happened and it's crazy. We have to do something about that now. I think we've got all sorts of things in store over the next few years. I think as well, it's not so much awareness raising on this particular topic now as it is about sort of bringing people up to speed with what's actually going on once they're at that point of like what's happening. They need other explanations than the ones that they were using to kind of explain what's happening now. So it's having those explanations ready, and then having like a toolkit of things to do immediately, like things that you can start doing and start being involved with. I'm going off onto a random tangent now, but
that is the point of a podcast, right? To go on random tangents. That's just good podcast.
But yeah, I think it'll be lots of little things that we'll start seeing, and even stuff like you've already discussed and mentioned. Like I think the whole education system is going to change and be re-geared because, now that we've had that experience of people not having to come to a classroom, I think that's going to change things. There'll be lectures that you have to attend in person because of whatever, and then there'll be other ones that like are online, but there'll be ways of making you sort of attend or not attend, and that you have to comply with for various things. But I think all of these things are going to change dramatically. Like you might be doing your 4-year degree on the other side of the world, but from your bedroom, that kind of thing. So yeah, I think it's going to be like we've not seen anything yet. I don't think. I think there's going to be lots of little changes, and then bursts of rapid changes of stuff like we've seen. Like this is the new normal sort of thing of like.
Absolutely, and it has a massive effect on the world of work, right? Because. And it's the pendulum sort of swinging back and forth because you obviously had this big move to lots of people working from home and acceptance in a lot of workplaces then that you could have flexible working, people could do some office time, some time at home. And then this swing back to forcing people to go back to the office. But what I think good employers are realizing is that what you actually have to do is you have to make the office somewhere people want to be, not somewhere you are forcing people to be contractually. That there's good, that there is nice places to work, it's a comfortable setting, that it's a good opportunity to network and speak with your colleagues in a constructive way, that you've got, good break facilities, all that kind of stuff, is a reason to bring people to work rather than forcing them to it. So I do think that's a lesson from COVID, but also then how we sort of respond to climate change in the longer term, that employers do need to pick up. And good ones are doing, don't get me wrong, there's lots of ones who are doing a really good job of that. But that needs to be sort of passed around in employers. They really need to sort of get that message, because every time you see a new employer forcing people back into the workplace and saying, no, you must come in. I always think the same thing. I think you've totally missed the point there. Because if you can't convince people that it's a good idea to come into the office, then you've kind of lost it. Leadership isn't done by force. It should be done by convincing people. So, it really needs to be picked up by more employers, that I think.
Yeah. And I think there will be other change. Like I can see a maximum temperature law coming in.
Yeah.
Because it'll just have to, and there'll just have to be ways of like this whole sort of all those stories that you see that the media love to run of like, we've lost so much money because of a snow day, and it's like, you didn't lose it because you didn't make it, so you haven't lost what you didn't get. So shut up.
Yeah, exactly.
So they sort of think, we've lost millions. It's like, you haven't. Nobody made it. It's just this back to front thinking.
The imaginary money that never existed.
Yeah. And it's like, it used to snow and things would close for a day, and that's what you just had to do because you couldn't work. Sometimes you can't work,
It is very funny, isn't it? Talking about snow and stuff. And you think, I've had this conversation with various people, and it does amaze me how few people connect that back to climate change. It's like, it doesn't snow like it used to. I think, there's a reason for that.
Yeah, because we're 1.2 degrees warmer than we were above pre-industrial levels globally.
Yeah, because of climate change.
It rains a lot more now, doesn't it? Yes, because the air's wetter. We made it wetter.
I can't figure out for the life of me why it doesn't snow as much as it used to. Yeah, I can't. I mean, there's literal science that explains why that has happened. We can't afford climate denial. It's just, it is wild. But yeah, that point you made there about the maximum temperature thing, it is desperately needed. And I think, employers need to wake up to the fact that they have to be ready for climate change as well, and not just people who are working in a heavy industry and they've got to pay higher prices, which is a very serious concern. But also just like a normal office building, how have you got good air conditioning when it gets too hot? Have you got provision for easing off from uniform expectations? All this kind of stuff. People need to be thinking about that in a really serious way. It isn't just a question for people working in oil and gas. It's a question for the whole of the economy to think about. How are we going to make ourselves ready for a different climate in this country? And I don't think enough people are prepared for that, if I'm honest.
Well, because they're not even thinking about it, and because it's not even part of the media discussion and the media conversation, which means, it's like the diversity argument. It's like, if you're not in the room, if you're not at the table, you are not part of the conversation. You are not thought about. And like you say, of like getting in those rooms to kind of represent working people and be like, what about people who haven't got your level of job, who don't have the company car and don't have all of these sort of things? What about ordinary people? That don't have all the freebies. Can we have something as well?
Yeah, precisely.
I think the temperature thing. So I worked for a bit, like a few months in a temp role for Molson Coors, the brewers.
Oh yeah.
And I was on the phones for sending out engineers when all the kit packed up. So hot day, your freezers are breaking down because they're overheating, they're shutting down. So you're calling everyone, you're sending engineers out all the time. I did that 20 years ago. When we're getting these hot temperatures, it's not just, the coolers in the bars, it's all the coolers start failing. It's all the air conditioning starts failing because it can only go so high. And then you add in, like, if we build all these data centers that are using up all the water that we haven't got and that we can't drink now because the sewers, because we empty our sewers into our drinking water. And you're like, what are you doing? What are you doing?
Yeah. And that whole investment in being prepared for climate change just is not happening in a uniform way. You know, it is a question of economic resilience, right? It's a question of how much issues can our economy take. And it may just sound like a small thing, a fridge break-in, but it isn't. If you multiply that over not just the service sector, health, so hospitals where medicine's kept, you know, you think of a multitude of different reasons why people have got refrigeration, and then that starts packing up everywhere. You know, that's a big issue that needs to be considered. So we have to think about the resilience of our economy. We have to think about, is it safe for people to work? Is it, you know, how do we ensure we maintain good work for people? These are all really serious questions. So that's what I mean when I say it's like it is the singular economic question of our generation. And it doesn't feel like there is anywhere near enough conversation about it. You know, we as trade unions are shouting and screaming about it and trying to make sure that we're talking about this with employers and policymakers. And there is incredibly passionate people in this space who put in, you know, their entire life's work into making sure this stays on the agenda and is discussed. But with everything else that's going on politically, it does feel like it's getting lost in the background a little bit at the minute and needs to be brought to the fore, really.
Yeah, I mean, going back again to COVID. So as COVID was happening, as we were watching it move across the world, I remember early on when it started making the news over here and they were just starting to run the story. And I was like, this is just annoying. Like, will you shut up about this thing? You know, because it was one of those moments where there seemed to be some momentum in the climate movement and things were kind of moving forward. And it was like, shut up about this. Ignore this. Focus on the main goal, the big thing. And it just got bigger and bigger and bigger. But they're related and they're hyper related as well, in that if we want an example of how we deal with things, with crises, we just live through it. You know, and this is the thing. Now we're at this point with rhetoric where people are still doing the, you know, it's off in the future. The future's here now. It's happening now. Like, we're in it. We're in it now. It's happening now. And we know how it will go down because we just watched it go down with something. So it will be this slow motion, like, what's going on? We don't know what's happening. And then things happen and we're overwhelmed and we're scared and we're nervous and we withdraw. And then we kind of, we get desperate and we reach out for people, and then stuff starts happening and we start doing stuff and making things happen. So it's, we just need to speed run to the making things happen bit.
Preferably.
Leave all the other stuff out.
But you're right, because, you know, you think about questions around homelessness, questions about job insecurity. They were all solved in months. You know, we as a country, we managed to come together and get that sorted. Now, a lot of that happened with real concerted pressure from trade union movement when it came to things like furlough. But it did show that with the will, it is possible to intervene in a way that you can quickly change things. And they did. And they did quickly change things around COVID. That same mentality, that same crisis mentality has to be taken when it comes to the climate emergency. It absolutely must be taken. And we need to wake up to the realities of a climate disaster on our economy, on the future of our economy, on the future of jobs and good jobs, the future of our communities. Because we need to we need to factor that into policymakers thinking, because I think for too many people they think of it as a question of saving whatever animal, like it's still some kind of conservation question, but it is far far more than that. It's it is a question for our generation that we have to come up with an answer for.
Yeah. Which is why I talk about it on each episode,
Yeah.
because it's like, and because people don't talk about it, and because there aren't spaces to talk about it. And like I said, I think it was an episode that I just put out recently, but it's that thing of like, oh, go and talk to people. But it's like, once you've talked to the people at work and you've talked to your family and they've heard you say it all, where else is there to discuss it? Unless you're going to, XR meetings or whatever. But even in the workplace, it's the sort of like, I mean, when you have a day, like, were you here when it hit 39 degrees in Leeds?
Yeah.
So you have a day like that. So I was working at Leeds Uni at the time, and they knew it was going to be hot, and they were kind of like, come in if you want to come in and you want to try and take advantage of the air conditioning or the cooling here, but also if you're going to be cooler at home, work from home. So they gave you that flexibility. Not every workplace can do that.
No.
But there is a risk, and at that temperature as well. Not everybody is like, oh, I'm not bothered, it's 40 degrees. Some people have real struggles at lower temperatures than that, and it's can be potentially life threatening.
Really can.
And we don't take this seriously because posturing, essentially.
Yeah, and I think it's what has to come with that is that recognition that maybe we did have the odd day here and there like that years ago when we occasionally had a really hot day or whatever. But this is becoming more and more common. This isn't something that only happens once every 20 years now. This is something that's happening every single year. In some cases, multiple times in a year. Every year, the news is hottest day in January, hottest day in February, hottest day in March. We are hitting that every single year. But I do think there is a little bit of blindness about it that I think, because it's been said so much, it's almost like it's getting lost. That message is getting lost. So I do think that's why we have to bring it back into the reality, what the reality of that's going to be for people in their normal lives, and try and communicate that really effectively, which isn't always easy.
I mean, it's infuriating because it should be so simple. Because if there is a bread and butter issue, it's that you might not have any bread or any butter because we can't feed the cows. The wheat's gone. So there's no bread and there's no butter and there's no job and there's no pay. So conditions not good. But it's that sort of thing of like, you can't have that argument. You can't put it in that framework because it's just like as if that's separate from, well, I go to a job and I get paid and then I have livelihood and then I have leisure and rest and, the rest of it. But it's contained within that. It's like, well, yeah, but you can't have. It's that sort of ecology and economy as if they're separate things.
It is. Yeah, and I think the unfortunate reality is for us now, because you are right. There were right up until COVID, there was a real the green movement felt like it was getting a real boost in its position. It was really gaining ground. It was gaining momentum. Then COVID happened. We've come out the other side of COVID, and it feels very much that that we have had this gradual slip to the right in our politics, and all of the space has been gathered up and garnered, either promoting that ideal or responding to people promoting that ideal. And there's so little airtime left to talk about things like climate change.
Talk about anything else.
Talk about anything else.
Other than culture war rubbish, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. To talk about blaming trans people or blaming immigrants, that's all we have space for. And I think that needs to be, for all of us wanting a better future for this country and for the planet. We have to be worried about that because we need space to be able to talk about a progressive view of what the future should be. We shouldn't just be on the defensive responding to the next horrible thing that someone from Reform has said. So, yeah.
Well, that's always a difficult thing within the movement, is that you want to be proactive and driving things forward, but so much of it has to be reactive because you're kind of, because it's a more defensive force than offensive force, really. But yeah. Anything else that you want to say on climate change before I move us on to something else?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
It was a good chat.
So the last one of these is social media. So I might add some other questions in here because I'm interested as well. Going back to that first campaign with Pizza Hut, sort of, I'm imagining that social media probably played a fairly big part in that. So, the question for this generally is, I want to look at how much time you have to spend on social media and whether you think that is a good use of your time. Do you get a good investment back on that time? Do you feel like you know what you're doing with it? Or is it just like, oh, I've got to do this thing and I hate it?
Do you mean personally or in my job? Because personally, it's definitely a waste of my time.
So work-wise.
Yeah. Because I was going to say, personally, it is one of those things where you sit there and you realise you've been scrolling through Instagram for ages and you think, what have I even looked at? This is absolute.
Did I come on here for a reason?
Yeah.
I can't even remember.
Honestly, I feel it feels like it makes me feel old and it makes me feel like I'm walking into a room that I can't remember what I went in for. That is genuinely the feeling I get every time. My 11-year-old will be sitting watching something and they are so funny about it because they'll just be like, why are you looking at your phone? We're watching this. I was like, very good point. That is a very good point. In our work, I think it's a bit of a battleground right now, if I'm honest, social media. It is extremely useful. And I think back to, you're right to point to the Pizza Hut campaign because going back to that campaign, it was incredibly useful because what it provided was an educational tool for the people that we did join up to the Pizza Hut Union because we had global support for that campaign. When we had our first day of strike action, there was people in Boston, in the US, there was people in New Zealand, there was people in Spain, there was people in Sweden who were holding solidarity demonstrations outside of Pizza Huts in support of what we were doing. That was an incredible education for the people who had never been in a union before, had no idea what a union was, and when we'd gone to ask them to join the union, they went, "What do you mean, the students' union?" That was the starting point for them to then go to, "Oh, I'm part of this global movement that's putting pressure on Pizza Hut on a global level to pay us some more money for our deliveries." That's a hell of a transition, right? But the problem is that's now moved to so much of social media is dominated by the right wing now. Podcasts. There's so many horrific podcasts out there promoting hate, and there's a recent report that came out of I think it was Channel 4 did it around these what they call auditors, and they are right-wing YouTubers who go into asylum hotels and run around in them. They attack staff. They're just using it as a way of churning out money, And some of the people doing this on social media aren't even politically motivated. They are purely doing it for financial gain. There was a particularly famous case of a Twitter account that was really involved in the campaigning to around the hotels that turned out to be an account based out of India. And it was just some guy who'd got involved in it because knew he could mess with
Yep.
the algorithm enough to just make a load of money out of it.
Yep.
And so that there is a real presence of that on social media. So, for example, earlier this week, end of last week, sorry, we put out on our TikTok channel something promoting a briefing, online briefing we were doing about the rise of the far right, and it got thousands of views. Fantastic, really, really pleased with it, but was absolutely covered in some of the most horrible comments I have seen. The language people were using was disgusting, and you think that's the space that it's become. So it's a real double-edged sword, I think, is social media, but it's a battleground we have to go and win because so many people get all of their information and all of their news exclusively from social media. Get their news from YouTube, get their information about what's happening in the world off Instagram Reels or off TikTok. So much stuff comes from that. So we have to be out there speaking, and we have to come on things like your show. We have to go on TikTok videos. We have to do all that stuff because if we don't, it'll definitely be filled by somebody else, and we might not like what they're going to say. So I think for me, social media is so important.
Do you have to? So, I mean, within your budget, there'll be marketing.
Yeah.
Is there any money for social media? Is it considered sort of like, does it get a budget, or is that just something that you have to do and it's kind of expected? Like, how are they thinking of it now?
Yeah, it is definitely something that I think the movement is investing in a way it hasn't done before. I do think it was. I mean, you'll remember what it was like. It used to be the sort of things like, oh yeah, the young members officer, he'll do it because he knows he's got a Facebook account, or she'll do it because she's been on Instagram before, so she knows what it is. Like it was just this funny little thing that wasn't interesting that people went on it. To now, it is something that across the board, unions are investing money in. They are setting up teams that exclusively look at it. Our work at the TUC is really good on social media. We have really good content going out on social media that I think really gets to some of the questions that we've talked about today in like an accessible way. And that, for me, that is that's exactly what we should be using it for. It's a tool to communicate with people. And I think I've seen that in a number of campaigns that we did. So in 2017, when I was at the NUT, and during the general election, we did a huge amount of work around bringing the topic of education funding to the top of the agenda. And it was quoted that tens of thousands of votes shifted as a direct result of that campaign. So massively effective campaign. One of the things we played around with lots in our region was doing a lot of these 2-camera videos. Obviously, they're very popular now, but back in 2017, that wasn't particularly a done thing, and they were really good. It was just like normal people just saying, "This is why education funding matters to me." Short, less than a minute video, just talking directly into their phone. You've got such a useful piece of kit here. A camera, a recorder, all the things you need. Just look into it. Tell us what you think about it. And we did a ton of them, and they got picked up so extensively. So ever since then, I've always used them as a tool because I do think it's a way of adding a lot of authenticity to what it is you're talking about. It hasn't gone through a filter. It hasn't gone through 10 different subcommittees to decide what somebody's saying. It is just a normal person, a human being saying, "I think this about this. This is why I care about this." Directly looking at the person on the other end of that phone. So those tools I think are so incredibly powerful for building connections between people across big boundaries. So I think there is a lot to be gained from good use of social media for making the world a better place.
I mean, how do I want to ask that? So what I want to ask here, and I don't know if you'll know the answer. but I'm thinking of, so when you start with doing online stuff and you're reading things about, doing social media, and
Yeah.
it's very much about followers and likes, which is what the platforms want. It's not what you want.
Yeah.
But that whole thing about, so I'm thinking here, so what you want as a business, if you're doing social media, you want sales. You want people to come to it, find your thing, look in, buy something. Like, so from a TU perspective, you want actions, or you want someone to either make another video or boost the signal, or like help build momentum.
Yeah.
So is that the way it's thought about? Are people thinking about, what is the action that we want from the post, or the campaign? Or is it very much like, we just need to share it, and we just need to get big numbers, and we just need to, make this trend or whatever? Like, is that thinking there? Is the thinking of, we're doing this for this outcome? Is that part of the conversation?
I think it's a bit of both. I do think part of the use of social media, especially right now, is to counter some of the other stuff that's on there.
Yeah.
So actually getting a lot of getting a lot of likes, or in a lot of reposts is in of itself of value. That
Yeah.
definitely has a value to it. If you create a video that has 500,000 views or whatever, that's important in and of itself. Because it's getting an alternative message out there. It's getting the views of trade unions across to potentially new audiences. But I think there is really inventive ways of using social media as well that we don't necessarily always get right, but there is definitely uses for it in campaigns, getting people to commit to action or activity. There's great ways. It's great for recruiting people to trade unions. You can be very intelligent about the targeting that you do around social media. So even if it's getting people to vote in a ballot, for example, so an industrial action ballot, that was used extensively by the NEU during their industrial action, reaching out to people in a way that they're going to notice it because it's on the phone, and they'll just go, oh yeah, yeah, oh, I am a teacher actually, and oh right, brilliant, I do need to vote in that ballot that I got through the post. It's just a different way of communicating to people. What we have to be really careful with social media, though, is that we don't oversaturate one particular method. Because as we've seen with one version of communicating with people after another, is if you just hammer it and hammer it and hammering it, people will eventually just ignore it. Same thing happens with email. You can't, people don't read their emails anymore. Email read rates are something like 6%. It's a really ineffective way of talking to people. Text message worked pretty well during COVID. And then very quickly after COVID, people got a bit bored of it. And even then, you don't get a decent response rate with text messages anymore. WhatsApp is probably one of the most effective methods of communication. But same thing will happen there. Same thing will happen with oversaturating social media as well. People just they're like, oh God, not this again. You have to be creative and be willing to try a bunch of different things when it comes to your use of social media, I think. Especially for our work as trade unions, you have to constantly try new stuff and have multiple channels that you get your message out by, because otherwise it will just get lost in the maelstrom.
Yeah. I can see that as well. The sort of, like you're saying about, you try one thing and it works really well on one campaign, and then but people get sick of it because that works, so you hammer it again. It's like when they've got the fundraisers and they're sort of like, these people have given before, ring them up again, and they'll give more money, and it's like, you're kind of inadvertently punishing people for doing good Like, you did a good thing. Do it again. Do it again. It's like, leave me alone.
Yeah.
I will never do anything good again.
Yeah, exactly. I promise I'll never be good. Yeah, no, it is. It's exactly the same approach, and it just puts people off, doesn't it? It puts people's
But
backs up.
there's so many asks, isn't there? And there's always something else, and it's like, oh, when doesn't somebody need something? But never. Everyone
Never.
always needs stuff.
Yeah, such is life.
Yeah. The fight continues forever and ever.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, so from the other side of social media, so has it been quite good at getting you in rooms with people and making people accessible to you, or is it? Well, I'll just ask that question. Is that like, is it a help in that way? Do you get to use that benefit from it?
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the real strengths of it is stuff like those little videos that you can put out on your Instagram Reels or on TikTok or whatever. They are popular. People do pick those up, and it is a way of getting a message over in a concise fashion. And I do think we need to, as a trades union movement especially, is get that message out there as much as possible. And those short little videos are an incredible way of doing that. We have been using them quite extensively in our region since I started, and they've proven really popular. And I do think it adds some connection to people that they pick up on and feedback on. But because for politicians, they see a lot of that stuff now, and they see a lot of your social media influence and your reach, and that influences how they are going to interact with you. They see that you're popular, they see that you've got that kind of social media following or whatever, and they will think, "Oh, right, yeah, that matters." So I do think it in that regard, it will also be important to take that on board when we're exploring the use of it. But it also gives you a way that when you meet people, and this has started happening to me already, is you meet people, they go, "Oh yeah, I saw you on that video," and that's nice, that man. That's good that people have heard you speak about. In fact, I had one about climate change the other day, and someone approached me and talked to me about it and said, "Oh, I liked that video," and started talking to me about what I'd said in it. So that I think is really positive. And if it's a conversation start with people, but like I said right at the start of this thing, favorite thing about this job is that you get to talk to people and that you get to hear what people think about the world, even if I disagree with them. The fact I get to, like, people will have a chat with me about their politics and their views of the world. Brilliant. I love that. That's great. If we want to disagree about something, let's disagree with it, but let's have a chat about it first. And if a video gets people to think, "Oh yeah, I'm going to go and approach that guy and talk to him about what he said in that video," great, brilliant. I love that, and I will always be up for that, because there's nothing wrong with a bit of discussion, and if it initiates that, then I'm very happy.
I mean, yeah, it makes me think it's a good way of talent spotting as well. And it's a good thing of, like, I mean, I suppose that's on the marketing and the media side, that's what you want to be doing, is you want to be encouraging people to make these kind of things. And then the people that have the aptitude for it be like, "You interested in doing a bit more of this?" And, sort of put the resources into that. But it's that thing as well, isn't it? Of, like, they don't necessarily need loads of funding, because some of the stuff that works is that they're working with nothing, kind of thing. So sometimes if you give people money to do something, you just ruin it, because they're now spending on making it professional and thinking about that rather than just doing the sort of thing.
Well, the production value isn't everything. Do you know, like, sometimes you see them and they're a bit overproduced and you think, "I don't like that as much."
Yeah.
Actually, something that is a bit more relaxed, feels a bit more DIY,
off the cuff, spontaneous.
Yeah, it feels, you can feel the difference, right? Can't you? And maybe it is my because that was my kind of music background, was doing DIY music and stuff. So maybe that's why I've got a passion for it. But it is very much, I think, it comes across more authentic, and that is something that in the political sphere, especially, people don't feel as much is authenticity and honesty. And I think if you can, if your method helps emphasize that you're authentic and you're honest and you're being yourself, it's gonna go down well.
Yeah. Yeah. That's made me think of something entirely new in terms of the media form of the internet and social media messaging and so on, in terms of authenticity, is that because it's a day-to-day, like cinema's a fantasy. You look at a huge big screen, people are projected to massive sizes, big ornate budgets, it's all about the spectacle. TV's more small scale, this size.
Yeah.
It's in your house, but it's still presentational. It's still sort of like, it's putting on a suit to turn up.
Yeah.
Whereas your mobile phone is like, it's in its dressing gown wandering around the streets with a kind of Stella, it's like
Exactly. Yeah.
and I think that's the thing. It's
And a
like with
rollie.
this,
Don't forget the rollie. Rollie is very important.
with no filter.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And you sort of, it's the sort of, it's the everyday. And this is why, things that have dressed up for the office can be on your phone, but that's not talking to you, that's not real. So I think
feels
that's
fake.
the reality thing as well. Yeah, it's like that is part of the medium.
Yeah,
it's that you can't do you can't put a big production on for it because it's not a place for big productions. It's the smaller scale. Anyway, that's just a thought. So.
No, I couldn't agree more, mate. I think it's absolutely spot on, and I do think it's why I have to be so careful about overdoing it with that stuff. Is it obviously you want to make sure something looks sharp and that you're happy with it, but I think if you stress about it too much and you overdo it, you will lose that authenticity to it. So get the like we've done, make sure you got the right equipment, make sure you're doing it the best you can and stuff. But if you fret about it too much and fret about the exact words you're using, you're going to very quickly lose any authenticity and completely lose connection with it.
Yeah, don't overthink it.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else you want to say on social media before I move us to the next question?
No, we're good.
Okay, so this is so I don't know if you'll have heard of her, but there was an American trade union organizer called Jane McAlevey. Yeah, you heard of her.
Yeah.
So I got this question from her, and it was one of her organising questions. So she'd go in and she'd ask people, if you could change any three things about your work right now, what would you change? And I just thought that is a great question. So this is my question to you.
Yeah.
So if you could change any three things about your work right now, what would you change?
Oh, that's really good. I've just got to say, I absolutely love Jane McAlevey. Her book, No Shortcuts, is fantastic. Her passing is a real loss to our movement. She was great. And what she was really good at is bringing together lots of different ideas from across our movement and communicating it in such a fantastic way. And I think, the sad thing is we don't have a lot of really capable communicators. And she was absolutely one of them. She was a really incredible woman. I went on her organising for power course and I was dead impressed. She did really good stuff. So what three things would I change about my work? Oof, that's a big question. Honestly, I think what I would love to see is union movement that continues to grow, a union movement that is more diverse and more representative of the working class as it is. So that means more black people. That means more young people. That means more immigrants, more people from a range of industries. Like fast food, like I came from. But ultimately, I think the biggest thing I would change would be a union movement that's got confidence. I think, throughout the 80s and the 90s, the trade union movement was in retreat. And we've spent a lot of time focusing on how we rebuild our movement. But honestly, the lesson I learned all the way back when I first got started was that we have to act with confidence. And I think if we start to act with confidence and act confidently when we go on into disputes or when we're interacting with government or political parties, we have to do that in a way where we're confident of what we're about, confident about what we believe. And when we do that, we will see a growing union movement, and we will see a union movement that is more diverse, because we'll actually be talking to the things that matter to people. So I would say, for me, those are the three things that I would change, and I hope to change in the coming years.
Okay, well, that's a pretty concise answer for that one.
Good.
So I'll move us on to the last question.
Mm-hmm.
So, are you familiar with universal basic income?
Indeed. Yeah.
So, if there was a universal basic income, how do you think it might change your work?
Oof, I think that's a big question. I think there's a lot of arguments on either side of UBI, right? It's a really interesting idea, and I think the security that it could give to people would be massive. But it's also the questions of what would that minimum do to our ability to negotiate for better? Would it kind of set the bar in a way that would mean it would be harder to negotiate for higher wages and better wages and things like that? I think they're all really big questions that we need to think about as a movement. I think there's been some really interesting experiments with UBI that have shown some really interesting things that it can do. But what I do think it's really interesting, I really like thinking about it, what it would do to things like creative industries. What it would do in the music industry, for example, when all those people who are first starting out and don't have it all put together yet. We saw it with the explosion of Britpop, didn't we? As the welfare state expanded in a way it hadn't done before. We saw a massive explosion of culture and people being able to say, well, you know what, I'm going to take 6 months off work and I'm going to work on my album and get that thing done. And that had massive implications, positive implications for not just for our culture, but for our economy. It had really positive things to be done. So I do think there's real questions to be asked about that. How I feel about it personally, though, I don't know yet. I'm definitely one of those people that I need to be convinced one way or another, I think, because I definitely can see some positives, but I do worry about some of the I guess I would say unintended consequences, as there often is with these things, right? But yeah, I think it's a super interesting idea that should be explored more.
So I want to get your answer on this. And go with your gut here. You don't have to back this up with anything. But do you think there would be more or less trade union members if there was a UBI?
I really don't know. I think it depends. I think it depends how it came about. If it was something that was a union campaign and people had fought for, then then I think it would grow. If it was something that was just put down on people from on high, I think the evidence is kind of out on that one, right? And what that would do. It's interesting. You look at sort of equivalents to big structural changes in the economy. Seen it in France and Sweden, that they didn't result in massive growth in union membership because they weren't necessarily connected from the ground up with union involvement. So I think it really depends on how it happens. Is the implication it would have for union membership, I think. So it was a longer-winded answer than I.
No, it's a good answer. Yeah, because you can see both potentially happening. I mean, it might be you just swap members, you
Yeah.
get a whole bunch of new ones, and loads of people leave.
Yeah.
I mean, as well, like as a movement, how are things looking at the moment? Is it still skewed heavily to public sector and older workers?
So, I mean, the recent data is showing that our union membership has stopped declining in this country.
Right.
So we've seen some positive signs actually in the last few years, in the last year especially, and it is more female than it ever has been, and it is more private sector based than it has been for a long time. So the growth has started to happen in private sector where it hadn't before, and I honestly put that down to the explosion in activity over the last few years. I think unions have regained a position in society that they kind of were getting pushed to the back of for a long time through, overtly political acts by Tory governments with an attempt to do that. But that response has been fantastic, and I do think it's a lesson for us that activity is what gets people to join a union. You join a union because it's active in the workplace. You join a union because you know them. You see it doing stuff. You see it changing stuff. You feel that change. You experience it yourself. Those are the reasons people join unions. There's, unfortunately, less and less people who have like a direct family connection to union involvement. So we have to show people what it's about, what being in a union is. But I do think some of that data would suggest that it's there is evidence of that starting to have an impact, I think.
That's good. What else? So I'm thinking if I've got anything else on UBI. I mean, for yourself, so this is quite a good one. Again, you can be diplomatic about this if you need to be. But so pick a number in your head. You don't have to share what it is. But if there was a UBI, you're getting that UBI, what would you do with it? Would it be like, right, that's going straight into savings, or it's going straight onto bills, or would you donate it? Like, what would you do with it, do you think? Or would you cut down your working hours? You might want to do more. You might be like, I can do more now.
Yeah. Oh, do you know what? I actually, knowing me, I think that's where I'd end up in the doing more camp. I think that's quite an interesting question. I hadn't really thought about it. I think for me, I would like to say, I'll save that. I'd save that for a rainy day and all that kind of stuff. But actually, do you know what? I think it would be more likely to be spent on going out, eating out more often. Because I'm a bugger for eating out, so I will probably just go out and spend more. Which actually, to be honest, is one of the positive.
That's a good result. GDP goes up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The pie gets bigger for everybody.
Exactly. Rising tide.
Yeah, precisely. Yeah. And actually, do you know what? That is obviously one of the arguments in favour of UBI, right? Is that it would, if you put that money in, people would be more likely just to spend it. So yeah, I think probably that would be mine. So I'll probably spend it on living a lavish lifestyle far beyond my means.
Well, it's the most likely answer, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
Like, I'd spend it on stuff.
Predominantly
buy more expensive wine. That kind of.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I've got terrible taste though, so it'd probably be really rubbish wine.
More of it then.
Yeah, just more of it. Or my favourite beverage, which is the most purple cider I can get my hands on. Because that's how bad my taste is. So, yeah.
What's the most purple one you found?
Oh well, actually, it was was a strawberry cider, so it was more red, but it was like a strawberry cider that I had. Lily's, if you've ever heard of Lily's,
Oh yeah, I've heard
they
of
make
Lily's.
some very, very sweet ciders. So sweet, in fact, that after I drank it, I immediately had a headache. So it was very nice. It was like drinking jam, though.
Yeah. There's a reason that some of those drinks come in tiny cups like that, and you're like, yeah, you couldn't drink much of that.
Yeah. Well, I tried and regretted it.
So that's all my questions.
Great.
So I'm going to do a chance for you to chat about anything that you might want to revisit or talk about. But before I do that, I'm going to ask you for socials. So where can people find you and the TUC?
So we have a full range of social media. You can find us on TikTok. You can find us on Blue Sky. You can find us on Twitter and on Facebook. For the old school ones in the group, we don't have a MySpace, unfortunately, for people as old as us. Although I wish we did. I kind of regret that now. I've said that. But it's all TUC North East Yorkshire and Humber, or TUC _ NEYH, and you'll find us on all of those. Me personally, I'm also on Blue Sky as well, and you can find me on there. Dave Pike _ Sheffield, I think.
I'll put all the links in the show notes.
Oh, well, that's better than me guessing what it was.
It's good practice for you.
Yeah. So yeah, you can find us on all those ones, and it's always great hearing from people via those. So do get in touch.
Yeah. Okay. So, is there anything that you want to shout about, rant about, ask a question about, or just say? Like, it doesn't have to be, but if there's anything that you want to flag up or anything that you want to ask, anything at all, now is your chance.
Do you know what, mate? I don't think so. I think that was an incredibly good chat. I really enjoyed our time just having a nice conversation and talking about stuff. So yeah, I feel like it was a really good thing. And thanks for having me on, mate. It was really fun.
Yeah, no, thank you for doing this. It's been great chatting to you today. Yeah, shame it's been such a grey day.
So I'm hidden in here, so I'll be all right.
Well, this is it. It's Friday afternoon, so we've done today. We've achieved today.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. 100%.
Thank you again to Dave for being my guest. Thanks, as always, to all my guests, and thanks to you, Leeds, for being my subject. If you are one of the 20 subscribers on YouTube, thank you very much. You are best. Please consider leaving a like on your favourite episode, even if it's your own episode, and maybe even give an episode a share. Thanks. If you would like to work with Dave, then you can go to tuc.org.uk/NEYH for North East and Yorkshire and Humberside, or Instagram.com/TUCNEYH. Okay, so there's 7 free places left for the podcast that I need to fill and clear for publication to get us to 200 episodes. After that, the plan is to work on curation and promotion. If people want to record new working hours episodes after I have reached the 200 episode goal, I would be happy to make more. However, as I have previously stated, I won't make any more episodes of working hours after 200 episodes for free. Not unless you can make a really good case as to why I should. So I'll do a proper autopsy of this initial part of the project when I get to 200 published episodes. I'm not sure what comes next, and it's up to me to decide, as I've no one else to discuss the project with. Hint, hint. Please consider donating to this project. If you're listening to this on the Captivate player, you can just hit the donate button on the player you're using, and that will take you straight to the show's Ko-fi page, where you can donate any amount that you would like to or can afford to. Donations will help me with the costs and labour for this episode, what you have just listened to, and everything else to do with working hours. Anything you can and do donate will be a massive help. Or commit to the project and give regularly. I still want to get to 200 episodes. That's still a long way off. After that, we need to promote and curate the project, as I've just said, and I will need to bring other people in to that next part of the process. I want to have this work funded, though, so please consider joining the Patreon to contribute to building up this project. Patreon memberships start at £6 a month. That's less than the price of anything you'd buy an hour of in the reel, and I'm giving you hours of local historical content each month. £6 is basically a craft beer a month for all this content. Patreon.com/C/working hours pod. Remember, you're not paying me. There's so much more to pay for before my costs and labour start to get paid. You're just contributing to this project, to working hours. I haven't given up on this. I just need to stop trying to make and deliver this project the way I have been. I need to attend to other parts of this project. I also need to get some real paid work for myself, which I'm currently doing, which may slow down output, but we'll see. So that I can justify making this show at a loss to me. And I need paid work just so I can have a less shitty, less boring life, at least for a bit. You know, for a change. It's been a while of being boring and shitty. Don't forget the Western Studios brand is a podcast making business. I make the Leeds Business podcast for Phil Fraser and the For the Love of Cost podcast for Clarion Solicitors. If you have a podcast project you'd like some support with, then get in touch. More details are in the credits about Western Studios. If you'd like to contact me about anything working hours related, then you can email me about the show at workinghourspod@western-studios.com. Okay, that is me. Remember, listener, no matter what you do, it's impossible for you to understand anything that your salary depends on you not understanding. So try to work for peace and try to plan with kindness. Raise your voice, but reduce your impact. Cheers, ears. Take care out there. And do be kind to one another, Leeds. Working Hours is produced, recorded, edited, created and published by Simon Treen for Western Studios Leeds Limited. The music was The Bees from Chopin's Etudes, which is in the public domain and was taken from museopen.org. Remember, Western Studios Leeds Limited when you're ready to start making your content in West Yorkshire. Follow Western Studios Leeds on Facebook, facebook.com/Western_Studios_Leeds, and on LinkedIn, linkedin.com/company/Western-Studios. Bookmark western-studios.com so you can see the latest prices and use my contact page to drop me a message about your own podcast project or working hours at any time from anywhere. Maybe you want or need a podcast host, co-host or narrator for your podcast project. Maybe you just need another voice for one or more episodes of your show. Podcasts are so much more than gossip, book promotions and marketing for online courses. Podcasts and other audio content get your online brand out there. Want to make some fundraising case studies? Want to have an audiobook or video course? Want to share your learning, knowledge and expertise in your field? Want to learn, teach or raise awareness of something general or particular? Want to improve internal comms with messages your staff might actually engage with? Or do you just want to brighten up the world with some entertaining content? Then make a podcast. If you're making your podcast within West Yorkshire, then think about making it with western-studios.com. Whatever your podcast questions or needs, get in touch with Western Studios Leeds.